but also to put some of the issues on the table. The question in my mind and of this event is whether for jobs in developed countries the internet is the solution or the problem. Because this is important and we have to confront this openly without wishful thinking. There are strong opinions on either side, and I look forward to a thinking and analysis and conversation of the subject here. First, let's look at the internet as a job creator. You all know this because it is the conventional story. It is a conventional story because for, I would say, 20 years, there has been kind of there was almost no way not to get supported as an academic if you had good news about the internet. So there was a kind of a proliferation of what I would call kind of like suck-up studies that competed with each other on kind of how the internet will solve everything. And yes, in this study we showed even more. I mean, there were some percentage growth rates and other things that were just off the chart. And the more dramatic they seemed, the more coverage they got by a starstruck press that was kind of largely uncritical and unjudgmental. And so there was this impression that there were these fantastic things happening. And of course they do happen, but there's another side to it too. But let's kind of start with the good news side. And partly you know this, and if I just kind of make an exponential line here with my hand, that's basically what people have known. And there have been studies or claims, McKinsey, that the internet is supposed to have cost 21% of GDP growth in the last 5 years in mature countries. That the internet economy has created 1.2 million jobs in the United States. Although if you look at the nature of the jobs, this is a Harvard Business School study, most of it was internet jobs, was really e-commerce and not something really creative. I mean, we're talking about essentially a glorified mail order business with lots of UPS truck drivers having been created, but that doesn't necessarily mean even kind of ignoring the loss on the other side of the ledger. So of those 1.2 million, 500,000 are in the e-commerce space. ISP providers, 181,000, but in content-related employment, this kind of creative type stuff, 60,000, which doesn't sound terrible, kind of brand. Software as a service, also kind of touted as this kind of great thing, 31,500, very precise. Some of the claims have been ridiculously overpromising, and I read to you about somebody writing about the Internet of Things. This comes out of the anyway, an article that, and I quote, "While today there are just 300,000 developers contributing to the Internet of Things, a new report from Vision Mobile, whoever they are, projects a whopping 4.5 million developers by 2020, reflecting a 57% compound annual growth rate and a massive market opportunity." Okay, 4.5 million Internet of Things jobs. In France, the internet is supposed to have destroyed 500,000 jobs, but also created a net of 1.2 million jobs. 1.2 million seems to be a popular number. So 1.2 million jobs have been created in France. And of course, also for every job created, there's a multiplier effect. And here too, there are competing numbers, whether it's 1.5 approximately or 2.6 according to McKinsey for every internet jobs, the multiplier. And now, that's kind of a bit the conventional story. There's another side here, of course, and I quote here, just so that I don't think that this is from somebody who doesn't get it, which seems to be, it's been the traditional argument. If you kind of disagree with the hype, then you don't get it. Is by the ultimate computer geek, Bill Gates. Gates said that within 20 years, a lot of jobs will go away, replaced by software automation bots. He said, and I think we're going to have a whole paper here by Rob Atkinson on the bots. What are you talking about? Software substitution, Bill Gates says, whether it's for drivers or waiters or nurses, it's progressing. Technology over time will reduce demand for jobs, particularly in the lower end of skill set. 20 years from now, labor demand for lots of jobs, skill sets was substantially lower. I don't think people have that in their mental model. So I think that Gates has it half right, meaning, but I don't think it's actually at the lower end. At the lower end of skilled jobs, it's much harder to automate. It's kind of the chambermaid in the hotels, the kind of road construction crews. Those kind of things are harder to automate than kind of industrial middle type jobs. And that's been kind of observed by other people too. It's the hollowing out of the employment. And so in the United States, there were 7.5 million jobs lost during the Great Recession, and half of them were in industries that paid mid-level, that had middle-class wages, ranging from about $40,000 to $70,000. But only 2% of these jobs have actually come back, or so the numbers purport to show. And 70% that came back are in low-pay jobs, and about 29% in industries that pay well. In other words, on the professional level, kind of people like us, things have been going fine. And on the lower level also, but in the middle, much less so. Now, there's kind of good arguments can be made, and I think that Bob Cohen might make that, that the market adjustments will, on the individual level, on the industrial level, will adjust for these jobs and they will come back or be created. But then there's also a question of public policy. We haven't even reached the acceleration of the replacement of industrial jobs in the robot sphere, which is increasing, the outsourcing to countries like India and China. Now, there are, of course, among the positive studies, you have always seen these studies that show that people who use the internet get jobs at a higher rate than people who don't get the internet, and therefore we should give everybody internet so that they can get jobs. I find this a real kind of classic error of composition. It's basically like saying having an observation that says, if you go to your job interview with a coat and tie, you will get a job with a greater probability than if you show up in jeans. Therefore, the national policy should be to give everybody a coat and tie as an employment policy. Okay, I mean, you just kind of, you don't create jobs, you just help those people who don't have a job compete against the other people who don't have a job. But now, so the internet, precisely because it creates efficiencies, undeniably, but efficiencies mean that some people fall by the wayside. It's therefore a job destroyer. And a job destroyer, first for the blue collar, then for the pink collar, the retail type jobs, and there are also numbers there, but how many retail stores, I mean, you see this kind of like, take bookstores. Books are kind of the most obvious one. Bookstores are just dying, and it used to be, you know, the Meg Ryan story about the big chain store and kind of gobbling them up, but now the chain store is being gobbled up too. So there's no happy ending there. Now, so secondly, the internet is, yes, and now also moving to white-collar jobs. Travel agents, stockbrokers, et cetera, even professors, my God. So secondly, the internet is also an economic destabilizer. The internet is also an economic destabilizer. It seems to accelerate, and we can argue about this and analyze this. It seems to accelerate ups and downs of the economy. 50s and 60s were more stable. We now have kind of gone through several shocks as we have moved to a more volatile type industrial scene. We can kind of analyze why that is so. It's empirically observable. So there's greater instability. Thirdly, the internet is also a force of inequality. That kind of statement tends to grate people most, because people who are kind of, let's call it, internet advocates of some sort, whether the kind of old line gurus or whether new kind of younger people, they tend to think that it's actually the internet solves everything bad, war, ignorance, democracy, dictatorship, and all that, and of course also inequality. That's just assumed, it's given, but it ain't so. I mean, there are all these internet billionaires, and it's not that everybody has become a billionaire. Why is this so? It's because, in my view, I mean, the important thing is, first there is a concentration trends. The fundamental economics of the internet are such that you have high fixed costs, low marginal costs, network effects, excess supply. All these things lend themselves to an industry structure that is concentrated, where there are few winning companies and otherwise kind of the others fall by the wayside. So the winners, of course, do well. Now, within those winning organizations also, you have economists call this tournament theory. And tournament theory means that it's the question of winner takes all. Does the winner gets everything, or does it get distributed more widely? And the analysis of tournament theory basically says that the higher the risk in the tournament, the greater you must make the disparity between the winners and the losers. You must compensate the players by a higher jackpot. And so the jackpot goes then to the Zuckerbergs and to the Brins and so on, and that of course gets the attention, not the others. Another factor is that the rapid Moore's law type change in knowledge and technologies means that the learning curve is short and that there is less value to experience. This favors the young relative to the past, relative to the old, and the old become more expensive and out of date and expandable, not just in other industries, but especially in the internet industries. So there's less room for older workers. And this is just at the time when life expectancies rise, when retirement systems become unaffordable to societies, and when companies find ways to avoid paying taxes in order to contribute to the pot. So the internet economy and the information economy is unstable, and because Moore's law acceleration of everything, the cycles become more rapid and the inequalities become strong. And so I think, what should we therefore do about that? Well, the first thing I think is kind of to understand better what is happening. But to do that, first we have to stop the denial. There's an extraordinary, maybe in academia a bit less, but within the ICT industry, there's an incredible denial about this. They think of themselves as the solution, and so when you kind of put a question mark in there, the reaction is almost visceral. So I would say, stop the denial, man up, woman up, and take some responsibility. Second, stop claiming to be the solution. What happens often is that people from internet-type companies or communities, advocacy groups, trying to take advantage of the problem to which they have contributed in the first place by proclaiming that they should receive more help, more governmental support, less regulation, more access, etc., and everything will be fine. Just give us more of what we have and we'll solve the problem. And the third thing is to think of supporting, recommending, and financing some governmental, public, and nonprofit actions here. This, of course, is easier said than done. So I don't have the solutions here, the magic bullet, but I will just put 2 or 3 ideas on the table, and I hope that other people will do so too. And I think it is important to have solutions here, because even though, and I'm sure some people here will make the point, that long-term I'm not a Luddite here, in no means, kind of, but there's a difference between the long run and the short run. In the long run, these things will be fine, although they might be finer for China than they might be for Newark. But in the long term, these things, there will be growth, and this is good, and things will become cheaper, and all those good things. But that does not help people in the short run, because the acceleration of everything today means that there is less time for people, for institutions, for regions to adjust. And so in that kind of acceleration, there's simply less room for public policies to be formulated, executed, and for people to individually to train, retrain, relocate, and all these things that they have done in the past to adjust. It simply takes more time, and so we have to deal with the short term too. Why? I mean, it's not only good policy and responsibility, but it's also good politics, because in the short term, losers are obviously bad in dealing with the economics and the technology, otherwise they probably would be winners. But they are good in one thing, which is political organization. And therefore, they will organize themselves, and they will create all kinds of protective measures. And you can see some of them already in Brussels and so on, where the Commissioner Oettinger is talking about using the regulatory system and all kinds of stuff to create a European, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with creating European this or that, but using the regulatory system to do so means really kind of a restrictive type nature of some players. Okay, so therefore, some ideas. One would be to give people the opportunity to take their Social Security in mid-career as a way to finance a year or two or even more of retraining, so that instead of getting your Social Security at 65, 67 or 70, you may take it a year or two of it when you're 40, and then it kicks in a year or two later, but you take it early, and that gives you the opportunity to finance yourself in your retraining. That's one idea. The second idea would be for colleges to require dual degrees. See, the problem that I see about colleges is that people make career decisions when they know nothing about nothing. And I'm saying this with love in my heart to students. But you kind of take a 19-year-old or 18-year-old and they kind of say, oh, I just love, whatever, women's studies, something, whatever it is. I mean, the point is, are there any jobs in this afterwards? And kind of, it's good for your heart, but is it kind of sensible career decision? And so I think that instead of making people choose between one or the other, one should require them to do both. So you can have one fun degree, fun major, but you also have to have one applied, professional, career-oriented training that will also kind of give you a job, and otherwise you won't get your degree. So you cannot, yes, you want to study sociology, go right ahead. But you also have to study accounting or whatever, something like that. Something really, truly kind of boring. Truly.
Is economics fun?
What does it fall?
It's definitely
the fun
fun.
part, or is it the
All right.
Very good.
Not yet.
That's actually a parental bill. Parents are funding, they always say that.
Okay, you're going to have your spinach, right? Okay, so these are some. I have some other ideas, but let me kind of come to the end, which is this is kind of a bit the lay of the land. It's partly questions, or at least some of them. The what, the why, the how are those issues we should discuss here today. There are kind of fantastic people here, and there are more coming. So for the answers. So we have a terrific set of topics and people to deal with this. And with that, I want to again thank you, audience and speakers and organizers, for gracing us with your presence. And now I give it back to our moderator, Lorenzo.
Thank you.